headed for the Battle of Leyte Gulf and got into a typhoon. It buckled the tights of our ship, and we had to turn around and leave and go back to San Pedro to get the ship repaired.
Well, tell me about when you were over waiting, for the invasion, and if they hadn't dropped the bomb, do you think you would have been part of the invasion force?
90 miles off the coast.
90 miles off the coast of Tokyo? Japan?
And Japan had 10,000 airplanes in reserve and 10,000 kamikaze pilots, only trained enough to fly that plane into a ship. And they dropped the bomb, and that stopped them from doing that. But at Okinawa, they sunk. I don't remember how many ships, maybe 11 ships burned. Kamikaze planes diving into them with a load of bombs and aviation fuel, and they killed about 5,000 sailors.
Well, now, what's the story about you all picking up the survivors of the Indianapolis?
We picked them up in Guam. They'd already been rescued, and there were 301 out of 1,500.
And what was the significance of that ship?
It took part of the atomic bomb from the Philippines to Saipan. It was on its way back, and they were told there were no Japanese submarines in the area, so the captain didn't zigzag in a Japanese battleship, I guess it was. No, Japanese submarine sunk them. They were in the water 5 days and 5 nights, and sharks got most of them. The Navy lost track of them and didn't send anybody out to find them, even after they were 5 days late. And a PBY is a big Navy plane, spotted these men in the water, and he landed, which he was not supposed to do, and saved as many of them there as possible. And of course radioed in for help. And he almost got in trouble for landing with those men, but the Navy was smart enough to know that would have been
a PR disaster.
Well, it was a PR disaster for them anyhow, because they court-martialed the captain for not zigzagging. And at the court-martial, the prosecution subpoenaed the Japanese captain of the ship, of the submarine that sunk them. And he said it wouldn't matter whether they zigzagged or not, we'd have sunk that ship. But they convicted the captain and relieved him of any Navy duties of any significance, so he resigned. He later sat on his front porch and put a gun to his head and killed himself. Only later did Congress exonerate him. Navy was looking for a scapegoat.
Well, I think the picture that I've seen that you took of the survivors sitting on the deck of the Hollandia, I've seen that on like PBS and then more photos.
He was in lots of magazines.
Yeah, but it just says U.S. Navy photo. But you took that.
Official U.S. Navy photo.
Yeah.
I put a notice on the internet that any guy whose family was father and grandfather was in that bunch of survivors, I would be glad to send a picture to them. And a couple of them wrote in. But then one fellow just recently wrote and said, my grandfather was on the Hollandia. Did you know him? He said he didn't ever tell us much about it. But did you happen to know him? And of course I wrote back and I said I happen to know him very well because he was a photo officer.
Oh, wow.
He had, after our chief who was in charge, everybody was transferred, all the photographers were transferred but me. And they made him photo officer. And he came in and said, I'm the new photo officer. And I'm going to have one thing to say. I don't know a thing about what you're doing. all I ask that you keep me out of trouble, which I did. Later, his mother would send him chili. It was so hot you wouldn't believe it. He would bring it into the lab, and we'd lock the door, and he shared it with me every time. We locked the door so nobody else could get in. We both sit there and sweat like pigs.
Well, how did they get chili to you out in the middle of the Pacific?
Oh, you could get mail, and
Yeah, but who mails chili?
the mail ship or Destroyer.
What, did she can it or something?
Hmm?
Was it canned?
Canned, yeah.
Oh, okay.
See a Tupperware bowl.
This boy told me, his grandson said, I know what chili it is. He told me the name of it. Said it's still one of our family favorites.
Oh, cute.